Once upon a time, there were two small villages named Umuaka village and Akona village. The two villages have one common boundary that separated each village from the other, and the owners of the lands on the boundaries are Akona from Umuaka village and Maziho from Akona village. These two men were highly influential in their villages. Mr. Akona, who was a troublemaker, has always looked for a way to take more part of Maziho's land. These have brought several quarrels between these men and their village chiefs. And each time this happens, it will almost bring the two villages to war because it has to do with land relating to their villages, and nobody wants to be cheated or taken advantage of. So the boundary land has always been a sensitive issue to the two villages. One day, a man from the city, Mr. Jack, came to the village to buy land for industrial use. He wanted to build his company there in the village, since the land is cheaper and he wanted a very big space, and the distance from the village to the city was not far, so transporting his goods won't be a problem. Mr. Jack came to Umuaka village and saw the land he wanted. It was a perfect spot for his factory. It was the land that separated the two villages, owned by Akona and Maziho. So Mr. Jack approached Akona about the land and offered him a huge sum of money. Akona was excited. The next day, Akona took Jack to see the land. It was a perfect spot, but Jack wanted more space. But the only space available was Maziho's side of the land. Akona without hesitation asked for more money and Jack agreed, so he sold the land to Jack out of excitement. After a week, Jack brought people to start working on the land, and as they started clearing the land, Maziho was informed that some people were working on his land, and he came with some villagers and stopped the project. Mr. Jack's workers found him and he drove down immediately from the city to confront Maziho, but already there was tension everywhere. Maziho's boys threatened to beat up the boys who are clearing the land, so Jack called the police from the city. As the police arrived, the policeman in charge took out his gun and pointed it at Maziho. He ordered him to step aside for the work to continue. As he pointed his gun at Maziho, thunder struck next to him and his hand froze and the hand couldn't come down. Immediately, he knelt down, with his hand stretched. He started begging for his life, and the other policemen seeing what was happening ran for their lives. Jack now knew that there is a big problem, so he called the man he bought the land from, Akona, to report the matter. Akona told him to leave the land with his men immediately, that he should have told him before he went there to work. He promised he will sort everything out the next day, and assured Mr. Jack that everything is under control. Jack moved out his boys and left quietly. They left the policeman alone with Maziho and some of the youth from Akona village. Maziho told the policeman, "The next time you point your gun at a titled man, you will not live to see the next day." The policeman begged him with tears coming down his eyes. Maziho said some incantations, and the policeman's hand was released. The man thanked him very much, and vows never to get involved in what he doesn't understand, and left the land. That evening, as Maziho was sitting in front of his house, Akona came to visit him. Maziho told him, "I don't like that fact that you sold your piece of the land and you allowed them to walk inside my land. Why?" Akona said to him, "My friend, you and I know that most of that land belongs to Umuaka village, and my late grandfather is the true owner of those land. The only reason I left it is because the boundary of the land was not well discussed before my grandfather's death. If not for that, we will not be having this discussion right now. Anyway, I am not here to fight or argue about boundaries, so let me offer you some money. Not for all the land, just for the extra piece that those men are working on." Maziho kept quiet for a while, then he smiled and said, "So you sold your land, and added extra from my land, and you are here now to offer me money without asking me first if I wanted to sell my land?" "Well, Chief Akona, my land is not for sale. You can sell yours, but mine is not for sale. It is my children's inheritance." Akona smiled and said, "Everything has a price, and also, every price has expiry date. I will reconsider if I were you." Maziho got up and walked to Akona's face, and said to him, "Are you threatening me in my own village and in my house? Do you know what I can do to you here and now?" Akona smiled and said, "My friend, only a foolish man goes to war with the wind." Chida, Maziho's first son who has been listening to their conversation, came out of the house with a machete. He rushed toward Akona and shouted, "Leave here now, before I cut you to pieces, you evil man." Akona laughed loud and looked at him and said, "A frog that does not look before it jumps, if care is not taken, he will land inside a hot water." Then he turned and left the compound. Now, it is obvious that a war has started, and Maziho knows that he needs to act fast, before things get out of hand. The challenge with fighting wars in the village is that 80% of the war is fought in the spirit, only 20% is physical. A week passed and all seemed calm. Jack, who has been waiting for Akona to tell him the coast is clear, was running out of patience, so he called Akona, but Akona wasn't picking his call, so he decided to go to the village. His wife, who was worried that her husband has paid a lot of money for the land, went with him to visit Akona. As they got to Akona's compound, Akona was sitting in front of his house drinking palm wine with bushmeat. Akona asked Jack and his wife to come and join him, but they refused. Mr. Jack was furious. He asked why Akona hasn't been taking his calls and asked if the land really belongs to him. Akona assured him that he is the owner of the land, but he just needed some time to sort things out, and once it's sorted he will get back to him. Jack's wife jumped into the conversation and demanded that if Akona can't explain what is going on, he should refund her husband's money so they can go elsewhere to look for land for the company. Woman. Akona got up from his seat. He looked at her and said, "Woman, in this village when men are talking, women keep quiet." Jack jumped in to defend his wife by saying that what she said is the truth, that he doesn't want drama at all in his life and with his business. Jack's wife replied, "It is my husband's money and I can say whatever I like because we have worked so hard for that money." Akona smiled and waved his hands in front of Jack's wife's face. She became dumb immediately. Her voice disappeared. She tried to speak, but her voice was gone. Jack was shocked and scared. He started begging Akona to return his wife's voice. But Akona told him not to worry, that once they drive out of the village, she will speak again. He then assured Jack that he will call him to resume work at the land in 1 week. One morning, Maziho came out of his house and looked at the sky and said, "The battle has begun." He quickly called his wife and children for a meeting. He has 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The first son's name is Chida, 31 years of age, very strong and a skillful hunter. The second child is Ada. Ada is 26 years old. She had told her father that a man wanted to marry her, and the man wanted to come and see her father, but due to the new development, she cannot bring the man until everything settles down. Achu is the last child of Maziho. He is only 16 years old and a very clever boy. As they sat down to listen to their father, he told them the dangers ahead, and asked that his wife, Esana, travels immediately to her mother's village with Ada, his only daughter, and he will stay with the boys till things cooled off. So, they got ready and left for Asana's mother's village. The next day, Chida and his friend Ikin went to the land to create a demarcation that will show how the land was divided, but while he and his friend were busy making the demarcation, Akona showed up and asked what they were doing there. Chida raised his machete to attack Akona, but fire came out from nowhere and burnt him. He was burnt badly and couldn't walk. His friend Ikin had to carry him home in pains. As they arrived home, Achu and Maziho were nowhere to be found, so Ikin had to leave Chida in the compound to go get help. Before he came back, Chida was dead. As he arrived with an old woman, who was known to be a healer in their village, Maziho and Achu arrived to find Chida dead. Maziho asked what happened, and Ikin told him the whole story. He wanted to rush off to Akona's house and the old woman stopped him. She told him, "Don't forget who you are. If you go in this manner, you will anger the gods of our land and you might even get banished from this land, and I'm sure that is not what you want, because if you get banished, Akona will take your land." It turned out that Maziho, who worships the god of thunder, once had a fight with another member of his village, and while they were called by the king to settle the quarrel, the person secretly poisoned Maziho's food. As he ate and was about to die, he called on his powers. Lightning and thunder came down and killed the man and almost half of the people in the palace. Even the king was struck by lightning, and the king's right leg has been paralyzed since then, but Maziho was healed by the lightning and thunder that came out. And from that time on, a law was passed that anytime he wields such powers that cause the death of many people who are not involved in the matter, he will be banished from his village. Instead, he must find a way to settle the quarrel. As the old woman stopped him, he fell on the floor and cried for his son. At Akona's house, his only son Udoma was having a serious quarrel with his father Akona. He told his father he has been in love with Ada since they were kids, and he has proposed to her. The man Ada wanted to bring to his father Maziho was Akona's son Udoma, but due to how sensitive both families are, because of their constant land issues, they were waiting for the right time, but unfortunately, another fight has started. Udoma told his father he must find a way to make peace with Maziho's family, but if Udoma see that his father can't make peace, he will disown his father Akona. If anything happens to Ada's family, I will take their side and fight you, Papa. As he shouted at his father, his younger sister came out to fight him. Her name is Oma. Oma, who is just 17 years old, takes after her father Akona. Their mother died when Oma was still very young, so they were raised by their father. Oma loved her father so much that she could do anything for him. She once went to a shrine of a native doctor to get charms, to help her father deal with another chief in their community. But Udoma hates his father's way of life. He was always looking for a way to make peace. Udoma told Oma, "Continue to follow Papa and his wicked ways. One day you will end up like him." As Udoma and Oma exchanged words, Akona sat there and never said a word. It was clear that his children were his weakness. He will give his life to make sure nothing happens to them. Later that night, Akona went to Maziho's house. As he came in, Maziho had just finished burying Chida, his first son, and was sitting quietly in front of his compound mourning when Akona walked in. As Maziho saw him, he stood up in anger. Lightning started shooting out from his body. Akona tried to apologize but was hit with a lightning on his right hand. Immediately he moved and sent fire on Maziho. The fire hit him on the head and went off. Akona's powers made him as fast as a wind, so it was easy for him to dodge from Maziho's attacks. As Akona was still trying to explain himself, Maziho's thunder came with force. As Akona moved out of the way, the thunder hit Oma, who was hiding at the entrance of the gate. She followed her father secretly that night as backup, and Oma died instantly. Akona saw his daughter lying dead. He fell to his knees in front of his daughter's lifeless body and cried like a baby. Maziho, who was hit with the fire on his face, also fell to his knees. He was badly burned. Akona carried his daughter home. Maziho calls his son Achu. He took out the necklace he was wearing and gave it to him. He told him to leave that night and go to Konu village and look for the great Ajil, that he would know what to do. As Achu left, Maziho bowed his head and died from the burns. That night, Achu ran into the deep forest on the pathway to Konu village. He ran till he could hardly breathe. By the time he got to the village, it was almost 3 a.m. Achu, being a very clever boy, still knew the right path to follow because his father has always sent him to Konu village. As he arrived, it was very dark. He headed straight to Ajil's house and found him standing outside waiting for him. Ajil was the greatest native doctor in all of that eastern lands. He was feared by all, and only come out when he is needed. Rumor has it that he was half human and half spirit because of the way he operated. As Achu saw him as though he was waiting for his arrival, he was scared. He raised the necklace his father gave him. Ajil looked at it. He shakes his head and said, "So the great son of thunder is gone?" Achu replied, "He is not dead. He sent me to bring it to you." Ajil told him, "The only way this necklace can leave your father's neck is when he dies, even if he wasn't dead. Once this necklace leaves his neck, he will die. So my son, your father is gone." and it is a shame because he had so much to offer this world. The next day, when the news reached the whole village that the great son of thunder, Maziho, has died, Ikin, Chida's best friend, mobilized the villagers to attack Akona's family. When they got to Akona's compound, they find him and some of his kinsmen burying his daughter Oma. They attacked them and scattered the burial. When the villagers saw what was going on, they came out to fight Ikin and his friends. Ikin and his friend were not a match for the crowd that came out against them. They ran toward the boundary land between Umuaka village and Akonoma village, where the whole thing started. Akona came and stopped the fight. He addressed the two sides. He told them he was the cause of these problems and he wants to put an end to it. He said, "We have all lost our loved ones over this tragedy, that everyone must return home, and he will find a way to fix things and make right the wrong he has done." As he was speaking, Ajil and Achu appeared and stood at the center of the land. Everyone who knew him stepped back in fear. He said, "This fight has just begun, and everyone involved will pay with their lives." Akona replied him and said, "Great Ajil, you have no business in this matter. Please, if anyone came to pay for your service, kindly return their money. This is between two families, and we will settle it and make peace." Ajil replied, "I am Maziho's half-brother, so this is my family." He took out a dead rat and tied it on the branch of a tree in the land. He said, "From now on, anybody from Umuaka village that steps into this land will die. And as this rat is decaying, everybody involved in this matter against my family will die." As he turned to leave, Ikin and his boys followed Ajil and Achu. Akona shouted, "It is enough, we have all lost someone." He went and grabbed the rat to remove it, and thunder struck him down. Half of his body became paralyzed instantly, and the villagers that came out to fight for him left him and ran away. 2 days passed and Akona was laying paralyzed in his house. Mr. Jack, who came to see him, did not know what to do. He couldn't ask for his money back when he saw the situation. He also learned that 3 people have died so far from the land dispute. Akona, who could hardly speak, apologized to Mr. Jack and also to his son Uduma. He said if he had listened to his son, his only daughter would still be alive. He promised to return Jack's money. As Mr. Jack sat there speechless, one of the villagers, a young man named Nana, ran into Akona's compound, shouting, "It has started! It has started!" Mr. Jack almost ran into the bedrooms. As he is not the type ready for violence, Uduma came out to meet Nana and asked him what has started. Nana, who looked terrified, managed to catch his breath and told him, "Aku is dead." Aku was one of the strongest men in their village. He was the one that led the boys that fought Ikin and his friends the day they came to scatter Oma's burial. Nana said, "Aku was in the market buying things and thunder struck him dead." He said the people that went by the boundary said a maggot dropped from the dead rat. Ajil hanged in the land, and immediately they heard the thunder sound. They didn't know it was Aku that was struck. He said, "This means that each maggot that drops from that dead rat, one person will be struck dead." He went on his knees and started begging Uduma. He said, "I don't want to die. Please tell your father, we need to find a way to beg the great Ajil, or else our village will be wiped out." As Mr. Jack heard the news, he was so scared. His hands were shaking. He said to himself, "What have I gotten myself into? What kind of village is this? So, I will just be here and thunder will strike me dead. I have to find a way to protect my life and my family." He came out of the house, ran into his car and drove off. 3 days passed and 8 more people had died in Umuaka village, including Nana, who was struck down at the middle of the night. All of them were struck by thunder as maggot dropped from the dead rat. The villagers tried to bring a strong native doctor to destroy the rat spell, but once the native doctor hears the name Ajil, they all backed out. One of the native doctor they went to meet told them, it's only a dead man that can challenge Ajil, that they should look for a way to plead with him and give him whatever he wants, for the spell to be broken. But with all this death, Uduma, Akona's son, was not harmed. People wondered if the father, Akona, has done a powerful charm to protect his only surviving child, but Uduma kept telling them his hands are clean, that was why. But his father Akona was still in a critical state. fighting for his life. The king of Umuako village reached out to the king of Akona village and they arranged a meeting with all the people from both villages present to find a solution. Ajil was invited and Maziho's wife, his daughter Ada, and his last son Achu were present. Akona was brought in a stretcher and his son Uduma came with him. At the meeting, the king of Umuako village apologized to the king and the people of Akona village and to Maziho's family. He blamed Mr. Jack, who was also present at the meeting, for not coming to inquire from him the king before bringing such a project to the village. Then, he asked Ajil what it would take to end the deaths that has been happening to his people. Ajil said, it would take the death of Uduma, Akona's son, to end the cycle of deaths. Uduma must die by hanging, for all the other deaths to stop happening. The two kings pleaded with him and asked why not take Akona instead. He was the one that started it all, why end the entire family, and beside Uduma has been a good man and has never supported his father's evil ways. Ajil said, Akona is already dead, it's just a matter of days. He took my brother's life and the life of his first son. We cannot use a male child to qualify a female child. Uduma must die and the entire boundary land will be given to Maziho's last son Achu as inheritance. No more debate over who owns that piece of land. The king agreed to hand over the land to Achu, Maziho's son, but the whole villagers pleaded for Uduma. Uduma went down his knees and was pleading for his life. His father Akona could not speak. He was shaking on his stretcher and tears rolled down his eyes. Ade stepped into the center of the meeting and shouted, no. I cannot allow Uduma to die. I love him and I am carrying his baby. Yes. I am pregnant for Uduma. We have been dating for over a year now. We are planning to get married, but we never saw the opportunity to tell my father about it, because of the land dispute that always comes up. The whole village was shocked. Ajil stood up from where he was sitting and looked closely at Ada. So you are truly pregnant? She said, yes I am, and I love Uduma so much. Please, we have to stop the killing. We have all lost someone, but it is enough. Please uncle, allow me marry Uduma so we can raise a family together. Ajil turned to Achu and he nodded his head in agreement. He turned to Maziho's wife, who also nodded in agreement with tears in her eyes. Well, if that is what you want, so be it. He raised his hand to the sky and made a loud chant. The dead rat appeared on his hand, as thunderstroke and lightning was seen all over the place. All the villagers ran for their lives. They were scared that the maggot might drop, as the rat was on Ajil's hand, and one of them would die. But Ajil placed the dead rat inside his handbag. And the two kings thanked him. Akona breathed a heavy sign of relief. He managed to say the word, "Thank you," and he died. Weeks passed. The peace in both villages returned again. Uduma married Ada and moved to stay in Akona village, as they raised their son, who they named Maziho. Mr. Jack was seen in the land as construction was going on, as he came out from the construction site to meet his wife, who was waiting for him near their car. Two elders came to greet Mr. Jack, and also greeted his wife. She only responded by waving her hand. As Mr. Jack and his wife got into the car to leave, he asked her why she did not respond to the elders. She said, "In this village, women don't talk when men are talking. I have learnt my lesson." Story ends. Moral of this story: greed is a killer, and it might take your entire family with it. Always be fair even when life is not fair. I remain Uncle Sam. Stay safe.